makers and market movers. This is The Pulse.
Good morning. Welcome to The Pulse. I'm Anna Edwards in London in for Francine Lacqua this morning. Now, Novo Nordisk is rallying after the company secured US approval for a pill version of its weight loss jab, Wegovy. It's a positive end to a very difficult year for the Danish drug maker, which has seen its market cap roughly halve in value up against stiff competition these days. Let's get to Bloomberg's Copenhagen bureau chief, Sarah Scholin, who joins us now. Sarah, good to speak to you again on this. I mean, how significant is this news then for the Novo Nordisk business?
This is obviously really, really good news and significant for them after, as you rightly say, Anna, it's been such a brutal year for them. This was not entirely unexpected. Novo had already guided that they would probably get the approval before the end of the year. And in Denmark, we're closed for the rest of the week and then two days next week. So they really had to get the news out about now. But this doesn't really take away from them that this is really good news. And we've had, to be honest, it's just been such a rough year over here for Novo Nordisk. The share is down almost 50% for the year. It's helped a little bit today. It's actually moved below that. It's not down 50% anymore in the year. They lost a lot of market share to Eli Lilly. They issued several profit warnings, had to change the CEO, change the board. They laid off 11% of the workforce. It's just been like such a tumultuous year for them. And now they're really going to start 2026 on a high note, and they're already rolling out the launch of the Wegovy pill in January, so we don't even have to wait long to see if there's a big uptake for it.
And so you've talked about some of the challenges. I mean, is this, Sarah, something that might help to reinvigorate the Novo share price? It's certainly under pressure year to date.
Well, it certainly looks like it today. As you said before, and it's up 7.5% today, and it's quite thin trading. All the Danes are probably left for the summer houses and the holidays at the moment, but they're all going back into it now to see how Novo Nordisk is doing. What was really going to be, I think, a key test for Novo Nordisk, whether this can or cannot reinvigorate the stock, is if they can keep this first mover advantage over Eli Lilly. So we expect Eli Lilly to get approval for their obesity pill maybe in March, April next year. So it gives Novo Nordisk a 3 to 4 month head start against Eli Lilly. Novo Nordisk has had a first mover advantage before. They basically created the entire obesity market, and then they lost it in the end a little bit to Eli Lilly. They weren't really expecting so much popularity. They weren't ready. They didn't have the capacity. But now they have a new management. They learned from the previous failures, so maybe they can keep this first mover advantage against Eli Lilly.
OK, yeah, we'll see how that competitive landscape then shapes up. Sarah, thank you very much. Bloomberg's Copenhagen bureau chief, Sarah Scholin. And we will be hearing from the Novo CEO, that's Mike Doustar, later on during surveillance programming, as Sarah says, new management team in position, relatively new, so 1:15 UK time, that conversation on surveillance. Thinking about the US economy and how it fares, the Fed Governor Stephen Myron says the central bank could risk sparking a recession unless it continues to lower interest rates next year. Speaking on Monday, he also told Bloomberg that data on housing costs has been impacted by the government shutdown.
It is true that the shelter stuff was somewhat distorted by some of the quirks of recovering from the shutdown. But it's also true that the shelter data were distorted for most of the year because of really long lags with which shelter inflation is calculated. If you look at market rents, they've been running at about a 1% rate for about 2 years now, right? That's not indicative of any price pressures in housing whatsoever. But it takes a really long time for measured shelter inflation to catch up to that, just because of various quirks of the statistical measurement process that I got into in my speech last week. So I do think there was maybe some downward bias in last week's print, but at the same time, there's been tons of upward bias in data for the entire year. And it's inappropriate to say, OK, well, we have to adjust for the downward bias, but we're going to accept the upward bias. That itself is a deeply biased position. We've got to be clear-eyed about both.
Well, do you feel like, and yourself included, but do you feel like members of the Fed are cherry picking what about inflation they like or dislike?
Well, I mean, I think that for the last few months, we've had data come out in accordance with, I think, my view of the world. The inflation data have steadily come in cooler than expectations. The unemployment rate has poked up, potentially above where people thought it was going to go. And so we've had data that should push people into a dovish direction. And I think it's somewhat problematic if you see those data coming out and you don't adjust your policy prescriptions in a dovish direction. What does that say about the reactiveness of policy to the economy? I think it reflects very poorly upon the institution.
At the end of that speech at Columbia, you nodded to the fact that recessions are inevitable. Fed's job is to kind of forestall them as much as they can. Policymakers' jobs are that. I'm very curious, when you look at the labor market in particular, the rise that we've seen in the unemployment rate, that's kind of rise we've seen customarily before recessions. How do you assess the risk of there being a recession here in the near term when you look at the labor market, for instance?
So I don't see a recession in the near term, in part because we are adjusting our policy rate by lowering it, which is appropriate. My view, as I've described, is that a variety of shocks that hit the economy, including changes to the population growth rate due to changes in the border policy, have pushed what we call the neutral rate down, and that policy needs to adjust downward to reflect that downward shift in neutral. If we don't adjust policy down, then I think that we do run risks of rising recessions. I don't think it's too late to prevent that, and so I think it's important that we keep on adjusting our policy rate down. But at the moment, it's not my base case, in part because I think that we ultimately will end up continuing to adjust interest rates down.
That was the Fed Governor Stephen Miron speaking to Bloomberg about his views on the US economy. Let's stick with that theme and speak to Thomas Romig, who is multi-asset CIO at Assenagon Asset Management and joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us, Thomas. So we were just listening to an interesting conversation there, Stephen Miron from the Fed, talking about how he sees the need for rate cuts to continue into 2026. When you look at the US economy as it is, as we get ready for the new year, do you agree that it's an economy that will need further rate cuts?
Our view is that we will see the priced-in rate cuts. So the market currently prices in 2 to 3 steps in the next 12 to 18 months. So we are seeing quite stable growth surrounding in the US, and we see more the surprises in inflation on the upside than on the downside. So I think it will be a tricky year for the Fed. In Europe, we have a flat valuation by the market because of interest rate moves. So it will be very much the focus on the Fed, and it will be a tricky year. So we think maximum 3 steps down, maybe only 2, because the economy is stronger than most of the external participants think.
Yeah, I mean, Thomas, I spoke to a couple of guests this week who said perhaps the central bank conversation, the Fed conversation, takes more of a backseat this year. Of course, there will always be the politics and no doubt a lot of news flow around that. But that actually the fiscal stimulus in the United States is something that we need to watch more. How does that fit into your asset allocation?
Definitely. So we don't look especially on 2026. We are convinced that most of the governments on the globe which have to do with global economies are learned a lot in the COVID phase. So they will focus on fiscal stimulus, and it will be, yes, supported by the central bank policies. So I have the same view. Fiscal policy will be in the front row, and we have to look and watch what is done there. We are in a mid-cycle year next year, so we think that the Republicans will do everything to keep the economy up and proud.
OK, and does that mean an inflation risk then, Thomas? I mean, you talked about how, you see inflation as being a bit sticky. Are we going to see inflation? Yeah. Are we going to see a Fed that accepts inflation above target in 2026?
I think that will be the tricky question, to give support to the economy and to keep an eye on inflation. We think that if it ends up, they will accept a little bit more inflation towards 3%. And that's the name of the game. So we see more potential for surprises upwards in inflation globally, also in the US, than downward.
OK, let's talk about the euro area. You join us from Frankfurt, Thomas. We see an expectation in markets that the ECB is on hold through 2026. Yeah. Is that your expectation? And how will that support investments in Europe?
Yeah, so look at the situation. So currently we have an interest rate of 2%. That's not high. So if you look for historical comparisons, 2% is low. And we have still a lot of processes which will keep up, especially core inflation, above 2%. And then you have to look at the oil market, energy market. I think we are quite supported with oil prices around 60. So if you maybe get a surprise on the energy side of 70 to 80, then you have the inflation game on the desk again. So we don't see any room for interest rate cuts in Europe, the same as the market sees it. So there are no cuts priced in currently in the Eurozone.
And Thomas, can you give us your insights and your assumptions when it comes to how much the German fiscal package is going to deliver for the German economy? Because on the one hand, investors get very excited about the overall euro amount attached to defence and infrastructure spending. On the other hand, plenty of investors tell us their expectations are muted because they're not sure how quickly these positives will come through.
We think the positives will come through, not in that volume which was expected at the beginning. So there will be some delay, but we would think, or we see that it will be a 1-2 year boost to Germany and also to the Eurozone, especially in the industrial sector. So that is, but it's already priced in. So we will see how it works through the system, and we think that we will get positive signals also to the other sectors here in Central Europe, and that will hold up also the equity markets and the economy here in Central Europe.
And what about thoughts on emerging markets? Are you looking actively at opportunities in emerging markets, and how much does that still depend on what happens with the dollar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we currently, if you look into our portfolios, in our multi-asset portfolios, we are quite short on duration. We don't like a lot of government bonds. We like emerging markets, both bonds and equities. We have a better surrounding the framework they have established over the last 10 years on average, always on average, is really compelling. So we see, in conjunction with a maybe weaker US dollar, more support for emerging markets, for emerging market bonds, even corporate bonds, and also emerging market equities.
And is it dependent on that US weaker dollar, though, Thomas? If we don't get that, is the emerging market trade at risk?
If it trades around 1.15 to the euro, not below, we see that the signs are green for emerging markets. So we would rethink our positioning if we go below 1.15, 1.14 against the euro. So that would be our trigger point to think about changing our positioning in our quite successful multi-asset portfolios.
And are you concerned about AI overvaluation, about bubbles, about comparisons with the late 1990s, Thomas? Or do you think 2026 will deliver more positivity on that theme, just as we saw in 2025?
We expect a more broadening in the development of the risk market, so not that much focus on the MAC 7 and RE theme. We think that we will get a broadening towards the other regions like Europe, like emerging markets, but it's not a negative outlook for all the AI positive stance. So I think a lot of expectations are priced into the valuations, and we're seeing already since beginning of the second half a broadening in the interest of equity investors, so towards emerging markets, towards materials, even towards Europe. So we see a more broadening, and maybe not this exceptional status of RE investments or RE driven stories or stocks anymore in 2026.
Thomas, thank you. Thanks for your time. Thomas Romig, multi-asset CIO at Assenagon Asset Management, joining us there from Frankfurt. Up next, the Bitcoin breakdown. We'll be diving deep into the market and looking at the rise and fall of Bitcoin in 2025 and what to expect from next year. That is next. This is Bloomberg.
If you look at the overall AI ecosystem in Europe, it's very weak in any way you look at it. And, today there could be a debate about will the US or China win the AI race. I think it's clear who is losing it today. It's Europe. Europe is behind. And it's true with semiconductor, right? If you look at semiconductor, basically take our shipment. The shipment of our system to Europe today is maybe 1 or 2% of our total business. And that's been the case for the last 10 years. So there is no buildup of semiconductor manufacturing in Europe, not advanced, not mature. Why is that? Is because there is also no consumption of semiconductor in Europe. Most of the consumption, as I said, of advanced chips are in the US because the company that develop the AI chips are not here. So Europe is behind, and to catch up, Europe has to create the condition basically to attract this entire ecosystem back to Europe. And that's a major task, to be honest.
Because we have the engineers, we have the researchers, we have ASML.
Yeah.
But Europe does not own the chip space.
Well, we have the engineers, we have the researcher. I would say we have the market. I think the European market is a great market.
That was the ASML CEO, Christophe Fouquet, speaking to Bloomberg Tech Europe last month, speaking to Tom McKenzie, of course. Now, Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan says the US economy will be strong next year, due in part to companies ramping up their AI investments. He spoke to Bloomberg about what he sees as AI's growing economic benefits.
The AI investment's been building during the year and is probably a bigger contributor next year and the years beyond. And so if you look at the data center build out, which is one of the ways it evidences itself, that's a big deal. If you look at client spending, like us spending on AI, that's higher than it was last year. But frankly, overall spending levels are shifting towards that, not necessarily growing at a mid-single digit rate type of number. So I think that's part why the reason we feel constructive for next year. We think AI spending continues. We think there's benefits to the American taxpayer from tax rebates, lower taxes due to the tax bill going through and being effective for next year. And we think the expensing and other bonuses for businesses are good. So all that leads to our confidence that we go from basically a 2% type of growth level this year, plus or minus up to 2.4%, which is all due to that. And AI is kicking in more and more. And so it's not all attributable to AI, but that's having a marginal impact that's pretty strong.
So much of the American economy is supported by the consumer. And you at Bank of America have a really powerful viewpoint into the American consumer. How's the American consumer doing? Because it has been very strong. There have been some people saying it's starting to slow down.
You have to step back. We look at American consumers, 70 million consumers, putting $4.5 trillion plus into the American economy every year. And we've tracked the way that goes in the American economy for many years. And so in the third quarter, it was up about 5% over last year. As we look at the fourth quarter here so far in October, November, I'd say it in a 4.5%, which is very consistent with a very solid growing economy. In the end of the day, it's going to work against wage growth. And we see in the underlying consumers we have wage growth, i.e. their paychecks are going up. And so the labor market's flattened out a little bit in terms of job growth and things like that. It's normalizing in terms of unemployment, but you still see underlying wage growth. So the American consumer spending at 4% more November this year versus November last year is a very solid backdrop. The credit quality of the American consumer is strong. And then you hear a lot about this discussion about different rates of growth among different income terciles or thirds. So if we look at the bottom third, middle third, and top third American income people in the Bank of America customer base, we do see differences, i.e. the higher income and middle income are growing faster, but even the lower income third is still growing, and that's all good. And that means, why is that true? Companies are employing people, they're paying people. Now the labor market's got a little soft, and as we look forward at 4.5, 4.6 unemployment, that is gotten worse, so to speak, than it was at the beginning of the year. But frankly, this goes back to the normalization question. If you look at the 10-year average unemployment, the 20-year, the 30-year, 40-year, it's 5 and 6%, as you go back through time. And so a 4.5 to 4.6 unemployment rate is a very strong relative unemployment rate. It's just a lot of the years it's been below 4.5% has actually been in the last 10 years. So people are very used to numbers now, which were part of the tightness in labor in the 2017, 18, 19 era. And you had the pandemic and it retightened. And so it's normalizing, but we feel good about all that, and the consumer's in pretty good shape.
Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan speaking to Bloomberg's Wall Street Week with David Weston about the US economy. Let's pivot to Bitcoin. It sprinted into 2025 full of potential, but since reaching an all-time high in October, the largest cryptocurrency remains fragile, with traders revamping their approaches heading into the new year. Let's speak to Anna Herrera, Bloomberg's senior digital finance editor, for some perspective on new year performance. So it has been a wild ride, Anna, for Bitcoin this year. What did we learn about the crypto market over the past 12 months?
We've learned that some things can change, so the environment can change. We can have, regulators that are supportive, like we have in the US now with President Donald Trump being a very pro-crypto, but some things like volatility don't really change. We can still have big slides in prices over a matter of hours. You mentioned, on October 10th, which was a few days after Bitcoin reached its all-time high, there was a big collapse in prices. And since then, Bitcoin has been in a sort of funk, and it can't kind of go back to that high. So we'll have to see next year if the market structure of crypto really changes to make it so that it's less volatile and less prone to price swings, which could then lead more institutional investors, pension funds, to come in more confidently.
Yeah, do you think that crypto is entering a different environment from a regulatory backdrop? It would see that story from the States would seem supportive.
Yes, for sure. And, you've talked about stablecoins before, which is a type of cryptocurrency that is seeing adoption by big firms like payments firms and banks and users that want to use a different form of payment. So that's very different, right? We've seen crypto emerge as a sort of speculative investment or perhaps like a reserve against an asset against inflation. But now perhaps in the next year, we'll see more strong adoption of crypto as a form of payment. So a useful form of technology.
Yeah, stablecoins, we have talked about a little bit, Anna, on these programs. What should we expect from stablecoins in 2026? They're pegged to fiat currencies, and a lot of banks and a lot of central banks are increasingly focused on them.
I think we're likely to see more growth in stablecoins. We know that there are some banks that are working on launching euro-denominated stablecoins. There's obviously the big stablecoin issuer Circle, had a big IPO this year. We'll have to keep tracking whether these get adopted more for payments, because as for now, they're very much used as a way for traders in crypto to move in and out of positions. But, there is big promise. Bloomberg Intelligence also estimate they might reach 50 trillion, I believe, in payments. And so we'll have to keep tracking and whether they do actually offer a more convenient form of payment that's faster and cheaper, an alternative to traditional payment rails.
Anna, thank you very much. Thanks for your time and the analysis. Anna Herrera, Bloomberg Senior Digital Finance Editor. Quick check of the Eli Lilly share price pre-market. Of course, Novo Nordisk stepping up the challenge with its approval in the United States for the launch of its oral Wegovy obesity treatment. So we watch how Eli Lilly is trading, and it is weaker pre-market. Coming up on the programme, President Trump reignites tensions over Greenland as he appoints the first ever US envoy. We'll discuss that and other topics in transatlantic relations. Rebecca Ha will be with us, Professor of Foreign Policy at Maastricht University. That's next. This is Bloomberg. Good morning. Welcome to the Pulse. I'm Anna Edwards in London, in for Francine Lacqua, and these are your top stories. The Danish pharma giant Novo Nordisk jumps after winning approval to sell a pill version of its blockbuster Wegovy obesity drug in the United States. The yen leads G10 currencies higher after Japan's finance minister repeats Monday's stern intervention warning. Plus, President Trump says the United States has to have Greenland as he renews his push to take control of the world's largest island. Let's get more on that story right now, shall we? President Trump has said that he's nominating Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as U.S. Special Envoy to Greenland. It's the latest signal that the president retains designs on increasing American influence over the island that he's previously suggested he wants to purchase. Let's bring in Bloomberg's chief Europe correspondent Oliver Crook covering this story for us from a little distance. Ollie, so I mean the significance of the U.S. appointing a special envoy. This is not a position that always exists, and it's not going to somebody who's going to be living in Greenland, I don't think.
No, certainly not. I mean, the person who's getting it is the governor of Louisiana, Jeff Landry, as you mentioned there, and he described it as a volunteer position. So he's still going to be governor of Louisiana. He's still going to be running the state. And we heard from the president of the United States sort of explaining why he chose Jeff Landry, saying that Jeff understands how essential Greenland is to our national security and will strongly advance our country's interests for safety, security, and the survival of our allies and indeed the world, as he said on Truth Social on Sunday evening, describing what his function is going to be. I mean, theoretically, this is going to be laying the groundwork in some way or another. It's hard to know exactly how for the United States to, in some way, take over Greenland. This is something that I spoke to the Danish Prime Minister about before Trump was reelected, a couple months before the election in the United States, asking her basically, is this still a live issue? She sort of laughed it off and saying, I think we've settled that question a little while ago and Trump won. Evidently not. For President Trump, this is part of a sort of broader thing. And you can even tie a line into Venezuela here. This is all about hemispheric control. The United States wanting to step back from the rest of the world and wanting to claim control over the hemisphere, whether it's the Arctic all the way down to South America.
Yes, and that and the national security strategy, of course, putting the focus there on that, the Americas, essentially, and Greenland just being to the north of that. So what does this mean for Denmark? I mean, Denmark currently has sovereign control over Greenland. Yeah. So what does it mean?
Currently, and they'd like to think, for the, foreseeable future, and that's going to be the big question. I mean, this is the trouble with the sort of Trump paradox in foreign diplomacy. Is on the one hand, no one can really say what they think about President Trump. They do not want to be confrontational. So what they try to do is try to find things within what we hear from the president to basically say, hey, this is something that we can be constructive with. This is something we can work with. We heard this basically is the way how Zelensky deals with all of his negotiations, and is how we're dealing with the Europeans. I mean, we've heard from the Danish foreign minister who said he was deeply upset by this. That's not the type of language you tend to hear from foreign ministers that frequently, they summon the U.S. ambassador to Denmark. And we also heard from Ursula von der Leyen coming out on Twitter saying that Arctic security remains a key priority for the European Union, and one in which we seek to work with allies and partners. Territorial integrity and sovereignty are fundamental principles for international law. Those principles are essential not only for the EU, but for nations around the world. We stand in full solidarity with Denmark and the people of Greenland. So that's the message from Ursula von der Leyen. I think the question is very often with the EU and many of the allies from the United States is you can say many things, the rhetoric is there, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it when they start to turn the screws.
Yes, and interesting that you mentioned Ursula von der Leyen throwing her support behind Greenland. Emmanuel Macron has been on X this morning doing the same, saying when he was in Nuuk, I reaffirmed France's unwavering support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Denmark and Greenland. Greenland belongs to the people. Denmark stands as its guarantor. So that's the European perspective. Yeah. And Europe still kind of picking up the pieces, I suppose, from the publication of that national security strategy from the United States, echoing things we'd heard at the Munich Security Council previously from the vice president, but still coming as something of a shock. So this in the context, that Greenland story in the context of a Trump administration that is making big changes to the way it does diplomacy.
Yeah, and in some other ways that we're reporting now overnight, hearing from Bloomberg, that basically they're firing dozens of ambassadors, career ambassadors. So we should say that the United States has two kinds of ambassadors. There are those that are appointed by presidents, sort of favor donors, the kinds of people that are friends of the administration, and then there are others who are basically career diplomats, and they stay in those jobs traditionally past the tenure of any president. Now, it's not so unusual to think that the Trump administration is doing things quite differently. They see these career diplomats as sort of deep state operatives. This is the kind of language you hear even from Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. But we should also say, I mean, we now have a special envoy for Greenland. You know what we don't have? An ambassador to Germany. So this gives you an idea of what the kind of, still at this point, almost a year into the Trump administration, where the priorities are for President Trump.
OK, Ollie, thank you very much. Oliver Crook with the latest on Greenland as that continues to, perhaps surprisingly, perhaps not, after it did come up in President Trump's first term, but back on the agenda, of course. Let's stay with international diplomacy of a sort. The former head of Britain's spy agency has told Bloomberg that intelligence suggests that Vladimir Putin is not ready to end the war in Ukraine. The former MI6 chief, Richard Moore, spoke to the Michelle Hussein show last month.
our voice is one that is listened to in Washington. So things change, move around a bit. That's the style of the current administration. But we are always there, and it's our responsibility to use that to convey exactly what the intelligence is telling us. And it's telling us, for example, that Putin has no intention of doing a deal, that this is not an issue for him purely of territory. This is about dominating Ukraine and turning Ukraine into something that looks rather like its neighbor, Belarus. So all of that stuff we talk to the Americans about all the time.
So
and I think you can see sometimes the impact of
doing
that.
A deal, Vladimir Putin, if he has no intention of doing a deal, then how do you see this ending? This
at the moment. So I don't think under current conditions that Putin. Well, I mean, I'm basing this on access as I had a few weeks ago to our understanding of the intelligence on it, and that is that he's not ready to do a deal. So for me, the answer to that is he needs to be put under more pressure. So he is prepared to do a deal. The president of Ukraine is clearly ready to do a deal. He's remarkably, in the pursuit of peace, prepared to give away up to 20% of his country de facto, and yet Putin is not. So what's going to change that? More pressure on the battlefield. Ukrainians have an undercapitalized defense industry. They have spare capacity that cash would solve. There is more that we can give them. There is more that we can give them in terms of permission to use long-range weaponry, for example. There's all of that, as well as giving them the sort of, the basics of air defense and all that. And there's an opportunity to put a lot more pressure on Putin at home. And I don't pretend that is going to give immediate results. One of the things I would say in this space is we have to be patient. We have to be prepared to see this off.
That was the former head of MI6, Richard Moore, speaking on the Michelle Hussein show. Sticking with global geopolitics, the Finnish president has been speaking to Bloomberg about how he won over President Trump with a round of golf. Alexander Stubb studied at Furman University in South Carolina on a golf scholarship. He spoke to leaders with Francine Lacqua earlier this year about the power of so-called golf diplomacy.
When I was playing golf with President Trump, we had a really good time.
What was President Trump like on the golf course? You played for 8 hours?
Very talkative. Golf is a nice social setting. And again, going back to my dad, I remember my dad being very encouraging and saying, Alex, even if you don't become a golf professional, golf will be useful for you one day. And I was going, yeah, sure, Dad. And sure enough, there I was on the first tee with President Trump. And, I had a good time. And it doesn't, the fact that you have a good time with someone doesn't mean they agree with them. Especially coming from a small country. What you want to do is you want to, nudge things in the right direction. And that means that you have conversations which sometimes can be difficult and awkward. Sometimes they can be good. And then, the rest of it is about getting results. And I hope I get results with my diplomacy.
But if you have a good time, does it mean that they listen to your arguments more?
I don't know. You have to ask them.
What did you learn about him? I mean, is he different?
Actually, this is the thing. And I've always said this, that funnily enough, and I hadn't really played golf for 35 years. I mean, when I quit. But I've always said it. You learn about the personality of a human being on the first hole of a golf course. You see if they're edgy, if they are impatient, if they're frustrated, if they're fun, if they're relaxed. And I have to say, I had no uncomfortable moments during that round. And we hit good shots and bad shots. So, people are quite different on a golf course sometimes.
Finnish President Alexander Stubb speaking to Francine Lacqua on Leaders with Francine Lacqua. Now, the US is suspending leases for all 5 wind farms under construction off the East Coast. The US Interior Department announced the move on Monday, citing national security concerns as the massive turbines may interfere with radar systems. The move announced on Monday puts a stop to projects including Ørsted's Revolution Wind. It's the latest blow to an industry that's been targeted repeatedly by the Trump administration as part of its attack on clean energy. New car registrations in Europe ticked up for a 5th straight month in November, putting the region on course for a 4th year of gains. According to the European Automobile Manufacturers Association, buyers registered 2.4% more vehicles from a year earlier, led by growth across electrified models. Spain and Germany recorded the biggest gains among major markets. UK businesses are ending the year feeling more upbeat about the economy's prospects after being spared much of the tax pain at last month's budget. Lloyd's Business Barometer rose to a net balance of 47%, with optimism over the wider economy hitting a 4-month peak. It comes despite figures confirming that the economy slowed sharply in the second half of the year, with forecasters warning it could contract in the final 3 months. And Larry Ellison is throwing his personal fortune behind Paramount's bid for Warner Brothers, providing an irrevocable personal guarantee of more than $40 billion. The aim is to give his son David the edge in the takeover battle with Netflix. The Warner Brothers board has previously urged shareholders to reject Paramount's bid, but says it's now evaluating the amended offer. Coming up, the Japanese finance minister issues her strongest warning yet to currency speculators. We'll bring you more from our exclusive interview next. This is Bloomberg. Conversations that matter and the insights you need. This is The Pulse. I'm Anna Edwards in London. Novo Nordisk is rallying after the company secured US approval for a pill version of its weight loss jab Wegovy. It's a positive end to a very difficult year for the Danish drug maker, which has seen its market cap roughly halve in value. And part of that has been about competition. So with this move, Novo Nordisk up by 7.8%. They get a head start on the competition in the oral obesity drug category in the United States, which seems to be important. Eli Lilly then, pre-market, has been a little bit sluggish, down just over 1% last time we checked in. Let's have another look at where we are. Yeah, down by 1.2% this morning. Now, US President Donald Trump has warned the Venezuelan president not to challenge the United States. At a press conference, the US president was also asked what he plans to do with the oil tankers and cargo seized during the continuing blockade of Venezuela.
The United States seized 1.9 million barrels of oil on December 10th.
We're going to keep it. We're keeping.
Where's it? Are we going to sell it or put it in the strategic?
Maybe we'll sell it. Maybe we'll keep it. Maybe we'll use it in the strategic reserves. We're keeping it. We're keeping the ships also.
The US Federal Communications Commission says it will ban most foreign-made drones and critical components for unmanned aircraft systems. The new rules apply to future imports and sales, not those already in use. The decision comes ahead of a deadline for adding Chinese drone maker DJI Technology to the agency's covered entity list. JP Morgan is said to be considering offering cryptocurrency trading to its institutional clients. Bloomberg has learned that the bank is assessing what products and services it could offer to expand its footprint in crypto. The move is a sign of how banks have warmed up to digital assets since a crypto-friendly administration took office. Data center demand and the huge sums being invested in terms of capex remains a major point of contention in the AI boom. Earlier this year, the SAP CEO spoke to Tom McKenzie and Bloomberg Tech Europe about the lack of need for any more centers in the continent.
On hardware, on infra, I would now not try to compete with companies who did a pretty good job, predominantly in the United States or China. The AI race is not decided yet on the software layer. I mean, there will be, there's so much demand now. The chips are there. Yeah. There is also not a lack of data centers. Sovereignty is, for me, an artificial discussion here. What the race is not decided is who now develops the best AI use cases for our life science industry here in Europe? Who develops the best AI use cases for logistics, for manufacturing? This is now starting because now what happened is the innovation on the infra layer, on the LLM layer. But now, finally, you can actually now develop also new innovation on the software, on the AI layer. And this is where it also matters most for Europe.
To be clear, because Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, of course, was in Europe a few weeks ago, doing a tour of Europe and making the case that Europe needs infrastructure, needs to build data centers and needs to fill them with chips. And if we don't have that component, we're not going to be in this race. You say that's not where the priority, that's not where the focus should be for Europe.
Look, the point is you need to come from both sides. I mean, you need chips and data centers when someone is consuming it. But there is not, the same demand for these chips in Europe like in the United States, where you have a lot of companies who need chips for training their large language modules, etc. Here, of course, when you now apply AI, develop software, develop, new AI use cases, of course, there will be at a certain point also a higher demand for chips and for data centers. But, now just focusing on the infra layer, on building data centers, I would predict there is for sure not so much demand right now. So you need to come also from the demand layer, from the top, from the software, from the AI layer, where again the ways is not decided yet. And then of course, what that drives is then finally more demand for chips, but in that order, not necessarily just building data centers for the sake of building data centers.
That was the SAP CEO speaking to Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie. Let's go from micro to macro news flow this morning. And Japan's finance minister has issued her strongest warning yet to currency speculators. In an exclusive interview with Bloomberg, Satsuki Katayama said officials have a free hand to take action.
為替の状況っていうのは必ずしも
Foreign exchange markets don't move only on interest rates or rate differentials. Especially toward the end of the year, around Christmas, trading tends to get thin, and many factors can drive the yen's moves. But the yen's sharp, very short-term movement right as the BOJ governor began his press conference last Friday, that was clearly not in line with fundamentals, but rather speculative. Against such moves, we have made clear that we will take bold action, as stated in the Japan-U.S. finance minister's joint statement.
Now that the Bank of Japan has moved to raise interest rates, the next focus is clearly on whether the government will step in with foreign exchange intervention. How do you see it?
We have an agreement with the United States that allows us to intervene whenever the yen makes an excessive move. That means we have a free hand.
In the past, a finance official has called a 10 yen move in a little more than a month excessive. So what kind of time frame and magnitude would you consider a sharp or disorderly move? Is there any benchmark you use to assess that?
I can't say definitively whether there's a benchmark or not. I worked closely with currency chiefs during my 20 years at the finance ministry, and I've stayed in close touch with many of those who came after I left. Each situation is different, so it would be wrong to expect the same pattern every time.
Trading tends to thin out around the year-end and New Year period. Is it fair to say that the authorities are fully prepared to respond?
We're always ready to act. That goes without saying.
When it comes to a question of a certain degree of fiscal discipline, there are various ways to interpret that. For example, how much the government relies on bond issuance or how much JGBs it'll issue. Could you share a bit more on how you're thinking about these points?
I can't give you specific numbers, but even after the supplementary budget was passed, we made it clear that the total amount of government bond issuance, which, after all, is what puts pressure on the market, did not increase. At this time, we're talking about the initial budget for fiscal year 2026. We're confident that it won't be something that places an undue burden on the market either.
There are concerns in the market that Japan's fiscal position may be deteriorating. What message would you like to send in response to those concerns?
By switching to active fiscal policy, we knew before we started that in the first fiscal year, some of the finance numbers would deteriorate. But that isn't the problem. We've spent 10, 20, even 30 years in a situation where economic growth barely picked up no matter what we did. There's no point in just doing the same things as before. We need to make a decisive shift, to concentrate resources and boost our growth potential. I believe we'll see a strong pickup in investment next year. And if you look at projected tax revenues for next year and the year after, I think what looks like fiscal deterioration now will prove to be only temporary.
The Japanese Finance Minister Satsuki Katayama there speaking exclusively with Bloomberg's Takashi Umikawa. Really interesting conversation, certainly setting the pace for markets this morning, reinforcing a little bit of a bounce of strength in the Japanese yen. Let's get some analysis. Ben Ram joins us, cross-asset strategist for Bloomberg Markets Live. And, how are the markets taking these comments from the Finance Minister then, Ben? We've got some strength for a second day in the Japanese currency on the back of this pushback from the government.
Well, Katayama has offered a Panadol for the markets, and that's working as intended, as the label says, because the yen has bounced back a bit and GGB yields have come off a bit as well. Now, the point is, those are measures, the measures of the threat of intervention is going to help at the margin, but it is a temporary relief. It's a symptomatic relief. The issue is much deeper. What is the issue here? The issue is that Japan is running deeply negative real interest rates. Its policy interest rate adjusted for inflation is deeply negative. That means that there is no incentive to bid up the yen against, especially in a scenario where the other global currencies are yielding far more, except for the Swiss franc. So there is no incentive to buy up the yen, and that is what this issue is reinforcing. So by trying to intervene in the markets, Japan can set right sentiment over the short term. But the long-term question is that what are you going to do fundamentally to restore the issues surrounding the yen? And there is no clear-cut answer, as we saw from that interview.
Right, yes, and if you're convinced that the BOJ is not in a hurry to continue increasing interest rates, then maybe you see there's no change to that argument in the near term. We've talked a lot about fiat currencies and their struggles against gold over the recent 12 months, Ven. We've got a 50th record for the gold price this year. What is the likely path for bullion into the first quarter of next year? We've seen such strength in gold, but also in silver.
Well, absolutely. Gold and silver have got momentum riding in their favor. And I think that there is a bit of seasonality for gold as well. If you look at the past 20 years of history, gold has always done well in the first quarter in 17 of those years. So it's an overwhelming record. And the median gains in the first quarter have been north of 5%. So why is that? Why does that happen? Because of purchases by Chinese consumers ahead of the Lunar New Year, and also Indian consumers in the wedding season, which is the first quarter. So I think that there is a seasonality way that will help gold. But the question is, what about its long-term trajectory? The market has the self-fulfilling, to an extent, self-fulfilling psychology where they think that, $5,000 an ounce is what everyone is talking about, including Goldman Sachs and so many other brokerages. So it is possible that we will get to 5,000 because there's momentum and the speculative froth. But the question is what happens beyond 2026? And I think that, if you look at gold's history from 1975, when it started, when Richard Nixon's abolished the gold standard, I think what you see is that gold has returned 3.5% in real terms. And if gold outperforms inflation by as much a margin as we have seen in the past decade, then I think there is a word of caution there. So I think that, up to 5,000 it's short term. I think there is plenty of upside. Beyond then, it's a question mark.
Yeah, I think Goldman Sachs has a call for 4,900, which is, a 9% upside from today's prices. So then it's nearly the end of the year. Almost, sort of. We do still have some data out today, though. Briefly, what are you going to be watching for in the US data still to come?
Well, I think it's the second set of readings, so I wouldn't get too excited about that. Growth is expected to show a moderation from the first reading, but I think that personal spending is expected to tick higher. And I think that as long as personal spending is doing well, I think I wouldn't be too worried about the US economy just yet. I think that, the economy has softened. It's no longer at the peak as it was a couple of years ago. Yes, we acknowledge that, but I think that, the prognosis is still good. The Fed expects growth to be 2.3% next year. That's well above trend growth, and they've revised up the growth forecast. So it seems all pretty optimistic from here.
Ben, thank you. Nice place to leave the conversation then. Ben Ram, cross-asset strategist for Bloomberg Markets. Thank you very much. I should remind everybody, the Novo Nordisk CEO, Mike Douster, is going to be with the surveillance team, 1:15 UK time. Big news from them today in terms of the pill sales of their obesity drug in the United States. That conversation front and centre. This is Bloomberg.